The tailwinds for Bitcoin or the catalyst will be...
My base case is the bottom is in, but it might not be. But at least a lot of the fast capital is already out.
2 of 3 major catalysts that Saylor calls as bullish for Bitcoin are in motion. And Lyn Alden's base case for Bitcoin is that the bottom is in. But is that ignoring all of the recession indicators that are blinking red right now?
So comments from executives are coming out and they're saying that they haven't seen demand this low since 2008, that this feels like recession levels to them.
The housing market is in a historic crisis. Oil prices are indicating that there's no end to this war in sight. Auto delinquencies are at all-time highs. So what's going to happen? Is Bitcoin going to rise back to 100K? Or will a potentially looming recession drag us back into a bear market? Let's find out on today's episode of Bitcoin Simply. Let's go.
The tailwinds for Bitcoin or the catalyst will be, a cessation or a resolution to the Gulf War, the installment of Warsh at the Fed, any loosening or any forward accommodation in the interest rate monetary policy, and then any positive developments in trade, right? And all of those are positive catalysts. And then the passage or resolution on the Clarity Act, right? When we get a resolution there, those will be positive macro factors for Bitcoin.
Catalyst number 1 is in motion. Kevin Warsh being elected as the new Fed chair. There's a 2-step process for that happening. 1, he has to be elected to the Federal Board of Governors, and then as the Federal Board Chair. Step 1 just happened yesterday.
In this vote, the yeas are 49, the nays are 44, and the motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Federal Reserve System, Kevin Warsh of Florida, to be a member of the Board of Governors.
49 to 44, check. Next step, Federal Board. Bye-bye, Jerome. That's a massive step, because as we know, he stated that he is a Bitcoiner, and that his first step is policy, and that one of his first steps is policy when he moves into the position is going to be to loosen rates, to drive growth. Catalyst number 2, the Clarity Act being passed. Late last night, the Senate Banking Committee issued the first draft and updates to the Clarity Act since January. More details are coming out on what the red lines and what the changes are, but it appears that there's optimism on both sides of it passing.
With regard to the Clarity Act, listen, I think we're on the verge of an agreement here, and I think this is going to be very necessary to ensure consumer protections, to ensure certainty for an industry that's burgeoning. We want to make sure it happens here in America, not offshore. And there's been great leadership by a number of my Senate colleagues, Senator Haggerty, Senator Loomis, Senator Moreno, who I know you have next. That leadership, I think, has put us in a place where we can hopefully have an agreement here shortly.
This can get wrapped up as soon as Thursday. There's going to be a ton of positive news in capital and cash that are going to flow into the Bitcoin and crypto space at large. But overall, investors aren't so bullish right now. They think that Bitcoin and AI are overheated and overhyped right now. Michael Burry is case number 1. He's opened up an even bigger short on Nvidia and Palantir than he even did in the great financial crisis. And he's not the only legendary investor who thinks that Bitcoin has lost its investment thesis. Uncle Ray Dalio, is completely misinformed about Bitcoin. But here's why he says that it's not the safe haven asset that everyone thought it was.
What's your view on what's happened with Bitcoin and why that hasn't played the role that many thought it was going to play, which is the safe haven asset?
There's an important differentiating characteristics of Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not have privacy. Any transactions can be monitored and then indirectly perhaps controlled. Central banks are not going to want to buy Bitcoin and being able to hold it. So it's not just individuals, it's institutions and so on, but most, and central banks. There has been some question or thoughts of the development of, new technologies like quantum computing and so on. Can there be issues regarding that? And then there's, who owns it and what are the other exposures that they have in their portfolio. It tends to have a pretty high correlation with the tech stocks. So from an ownership, just the supply demand is affected by if somebody gets squeezed in one thing, they sell something, whatever else they have. So there are those dynamics. It's a long way, and it's a relatively small market that's a relatively controllable market. I think a lot of attention has been given to Bitcoin, But as a money, it's small in relationship to gold. And so, those are the dynamics. There is only one gold.
No privacy, wrong. Correlated with tech stocks, he hasn't been paying attention clearly because Bitcoin is breaking the trend of being correlated with tech stocks. And it's so small that it can be controlled. Wrong. Ray is wrong on all three accounts, and he doesn't clearly understand the amount of capital and assets that are going to flow into Bitcoin through the passing of the Clarity Act. Ray doesn't understand that there are companies out there like MicroStrategy who raised $437 million yesterday that are just buying Bitcoin. He's thinking about the traditional central bankers. He's not thinking about someone like Michael Saylor acting as if he's a central banker. If the old guard central banks aren't thinking about Bitcoin in this way, well, there's going to be a new central banker in town, Michael Saylor. Did you hear that clip where he said, if I'm thinking like a central banker, if I lower the interest rate policy by 0.25%, what's that going to do to the demand that drives into my credit instrument?
If we get to the point where we've issued $1 trillion of credit and the company has an equity market cap of $3 trillion, right? Yeah. And we lower the interest rate 25 basis points, we're going to make an obscene amount of money for our equity shareholders in that 1 month. People are going to go, oh my God, right? They just made billions of dollars for the equity overnight. And that would be equivalent to Amazon having 250 million Prime customers and saying, we raised the price from $10 to $11. But you can imagine the time when I want to do that is when we own the market. Like when 5% or 10% of the entire credit market or the treasury market is flipped to digital credit, we might, and by the way, we would only do it if the Bitcoin economy slows down. If Bitcoin's growing 30% a year, we're just going to continue to drive the credit here. But let's say Bitcoin backs off and Bitcoin's only growing 20% a year, right? Then it's kind of like, if you're the central bank of Bitcoin or the reserve bank, you might think, well, we're going to slightly lower the interest rate to keep things going and not overheat. But that is so many years in the future, and that is when Bitcoin's $1 million coin, and we're 10 years out, and then we can talk about it.
He's talking about numbers of a $3 trillion, $5 trillion, $6 trillion credit market. He's thinking in a 10-year horizon, with Bitcoin's price being at $1 million. Sounds like there's going to be a new kind of central banker moving forward. And with that kind of thinking, how much actual supply of Bitcoin is going to be left? Before we go any further, let's thank our sponsors. Ledn has been the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018. Allowing you to be your own bank, your own central bank, borrowing against your own assets to raise fiat dollars in order to pay for your current liabilities. That's exactly what you can do. If you've been buying Bitcoin, don't sell it. Have no capital gains and just borrow against yourself. Borrow up to 50% loan to value that you can repay at any time with no credit checks and interest rates at about half of what you could get for a credit card. Top it up anytime and keep the loan rolling. After all, Bitcoin is growing 30 to 40% a year. Don't sell it for fiat. Go to learn.ledn.io/simply to get started. Speaking of banks, you can become your own bank, your own central bank, by running your own node privately. Yes, you can do that, Ray Dalio. You can have a private Bitcoin node where no one can see your transactions because it's run over the Tor network. What does that even mean? How do I get started doing that? That sounds interesting. Schedule a free 30-minute meeting with the team at the Bitcoin Way, and they'll walk you through exactly how to run a node, how to manage your own private keys, and how to be your own central bank in the world of Bitcoin. Go to thebitcoinway.com/partner/Dante-Cook to get started. There's recession fears on the horizon. Right now, it's actually harder to sell a home than it was in the great financial crisis. There's over 600,000 sellers than there are buyers in the market. No one has money to buy houses. And President Trump right now is coming out and saying that his goal is to make housing affordable. It's too unaffordable right now. People are competing with outside investors, they're competing with high interest rates, and there isn't enough economic growth in the economy right now to stimulate home buying. And this is the type of thing that Kevin Warsh sees, and he's going to start to implement right away. I believe that there's going to be a flood of capital into Bitcoin. He's seeing that household unemployment drop for the 4th straight month. But when you're thinking like a long-term investor, you're not thinking about the short term, you're thinking about the long term. Regardless of whether Bitcoin is overvalued or undervalued at the moment, you don't really care. You understand that it's the most scarce, desirable asset in a world moving towards digital credit and digital assets. It's the only asset that can't be copied, replicated, or recreated by some other asset. And this is exactly Ledn's base case right now. The bottom is in, and the long-term trends for Bitcoin look good right now.
Fast money's already out, so you get seller exhaustion. Now, whether it's already entirely out yet, still is an open question. Like it's just like my base case is the bottom is in, but it might not be. But at least a lot of the fast capital is already out. We've seen kind of coins rotate to more strongly held hands. I think that's a really important kind of factor in kind of building the next base. And then two, changes in liquidity, right? So if you don't have energy shocks that are causing liquidity shortages and potentially forcing entities to degross positions from a trading perspective, then that starts alleviating Bitcoin. If you see governments do energy stimmy checks, for example, and just kind of like money supply starts accelerating in various capacities, that can find its way into scarcer assets. It can find its that's what the gold enthusiasts are looking for. That's what the Bitcoin enthusiasts are for. That's why some people are willing to hold really top tier stocks even at kind of inflated valuations, because they say, well, I'm not going to bet against the money printer, so I want to own the scarcest things, even if occasionally they're richly priced. And the good news about Bitcoin is that it's not really richly priced at the moment.
Bitcoin is the apex asset. We have Kevin Warsh coming in. We have the Clarity Act that's probably going to get passed in the next several weeks. And we've got Saylor thinking like he's a central banker of Bitcoin. This is bullish, and this is why I do think, unforeseeing another eruption in the war in Iran, that Bitcoin will continue its march towards 100K. The liquidity horizon is going to change in a meaningful way right now. Doesn't change my thesis at all, but just giving you some tips and ideas, and some alpha which we always drop on this channel if you haven't already subscribed. You know what's also a great thing to do right now is get into Bitcoin mining if you haven't. Mining difficulty is dropping while hash prices are rising, meaning you're earning more Bitcoin with less competition on the network right now. Don't worry about all that. Just give the team at SAS Mining your money and they will buy you a Bitcoin mining machine, connect it to power, repair it, maintain it, and send sats straight to your wallet. Use the QR code to get started. This is Dante Cook with Bitcoin Simply. Happy stacking.